All right. This is Brian, Atlanta Hot Tub Center and Tub Talk 101. And today by popular demand, we're going to talk about low chlorine levels and the best way to fix that without overdoing it or underdoing it. So before we do, if you like this video, please like and subscribe because it helps us reach more people, help them and their families with their hot tubs. Now, guys, you know that we sell Sundance and Jacuzzi brand in different stores, but we work on all hot tubs out there, right? So Hot Spring, Caldera, we work on all those hot tubs. We see all the different systems in the industry, and just about any system that you got is going to require a little bit of a chlorine additive. Even salt systems, a lot of times you need to add a little bit of chlorine throughout using it to help really maintain it, right? Because the salt is only going to make, or the salt generator is only going to make so much chlorine from the salt that's going into it, right? All right, so let's get rolling here. Let's start with just a traditional chlorine system, okay, that you maintain at 3 to 5 parts per million, okay? That traditional system, you're thinking to yourself, well, I just add a bunch to it, and then over the week it kind of burns off, and then I add a bunch to it. That's really not the best way to do it. What I would tell you to do is try to maintain it around 3 parts per million. Even if you drop a little bit low, that's okay, but try to maintain around 3 parts per million and add small spurts of chlorine throughout the week. Because when you add an abundance of chlorine all at one time, you're going to spike your chlorine way beyond 5 parts per million, and it's not going to be as comfortable for you to use it. You're going to be smelling in chlorine, inhaling in all the chlorine gases and stuff because there's such an abundance of chlorine in there, it has nowhere to go. That is, to me, that is not a good way or a healthy way to use your hot tub. So instead, my suggestion would be add a tablespoon of chlorine a couple of times a week and maintain around 3 parts per million. If you're using it a lot, well, maybe you have to add 3 tablespoons of chlorine throughout the week. Now, we're not going to get into shock oxidizer and any other chemicals today, right? We're going to stay focused on chlorine, but obviously you need to maintain all the chemicals in your hot tub. All right, next, let's move on to a system that we're all very familiar with on this channel. It's used in hot tubs all over the place. Almost every brand out there is using the AdEase system in one form or another. Okay, obviously we sell Sundance and Jacuzzi. They both use the AdEase system, and it's a cartridge system that connects over your filter, and as the water circulates, it drips out a little bit of chlorine. The idea of this system is that you can maintain chlorine levels very, 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 very low, okay? But I'm gonna tell you a little bit of a secret. I've had some customers, okay, over the years that just have some trouble maintaining the chlorine levels. Their use levels are really high, or their tubs are really, really big, right? And they don't wanna have to replace a cartridge every 3 weeks, a cartridge every 4 weeks, okay? I'm gonna give you a little trick here, okay? These are the Jump Start packets. These come in your starter kit for the AdEase system, no matter what AdEase system you have, whether it's the ball, the cartridges, whatever, okay? And what you can do is just add an extra tablespoon of this every single week. And you're saying, well, Brian, why use that little Jump Start packet? Why not get a bottle of actual chlorine? Because in granular form, it is very, very hard to find trichlor. The cartridge system is trichlor. It is not sodium dichlor. They are both chlorine, but they are different forms of chlorine. And what we have found through testing with chemists is that trichlor is much more effective and works much better with trichlor. And sodium dichlor works very well with sodium dichlor. So stick to the type of chlorine that you are using so it is most effective in the water, okay? So what we did was we did some testing. I did some testing with a chemist, okay? He has a PhD in chemistry, so we did some testing, and what we found is that if we add a tablespoon of this every single week with the AdEase cartridges, that we've now stretched the AdEase cartridges to 6 weeks. You can turn your AdEase cartridge down, whether you have the ball or whatever system you have, you can turn the chlorine cartridge down, okay, to like 2, and just add a tablespoon of trichlor every single week, and now you can get like 6 weeks, 7 weeks out of a cartridge, depending on your use level, how many people are using it, and of course how much of this you are using, but these are pretty inexpensive. So my suggestion is, if you're struggling with chlorine and you have an at-ease system and it just can't keep up with the use level or whatever it is you're doing, it's a rental, something like that, add an extra tablespoon of this every single week and turn your cartridge down. And then of course, balance your water. And maybe you split it into 2 teaspoons of this a week. I mean, I don't know, right? Maybe you say, you know what, I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of this and I want my cartridges to last 2 months, right? I'll let you kind of play with how you want to play it, but this is good information. I think it's good information if you're struggling to maintain your chlorine with your at-ease system. Now, salt systems, right? And I'm just going to touch on this, so I'm just trying to give everybody kind of an idea here. Salt systems, the way that it works is it takes sodium chloride. Sodium chloride goes into the water. Then there's a salt generator, or a salt cell, and that salt cell splits apart the molecules and creates natural chlorine. Sometimes people don't realize that a salt system is actually a chlorine system. It turns the salt into chlorine. We're not going to get into other chemicals today, but again, you still need to balance your pH, your alkalinity, all this stuff with the salt system, but I would suggest here and there adding a small amount of chlorine if you are struggling to keep the chlorine levels up in your salt system. With a salt system, you don't just test the salt parts per million, but you also test the chlorine parts per million, right? You have 2 different test strips there because you have to make sure that the salt is turning into chlorine so that you have a sanitizer in the water. And if you're struggling, if your system is struggling to keep up, right, then it's not a bad idea to supplement some chlorine. And you can do that with sodium dichlor. You don't have to do these little packets or whatever. You can do it with sodium dichlor. But again, if you are struggling to keep the chlorine up in any of your systems, there's nothing wrong with adding a little bit of extra throughout each week and adding it to your regimen. My biggest suggestion is spread it out a little bit. Nobody wants to add a bunch of chlorine and jump in and smell the chlorine, the eyes are burning and stuff like that. It's not that healthy. Where it really gets healthy in my eyes, okay, is when you get down to 1 to 2 parts per million of chlorine. You can maintain a hot tub of 1 to 2 parts per million of chlorine, really, right? The trick is if you don't have something like the at-ease system, right, then you have to go out there and add the chlorine. It can be a little bit tricky if you're trying to do that on a traditional system, right? If you don't have, you know, a system that's integrated, right, and you're trying to maintain a 1 or 2 parts per million of chlorine, you got to go out there 5 times a week and add a little bit of chlorine to try to maintain chlorine levels that low. But that's always my best suggestion, right? You can't even tell the chlorine's in the water. You can't smell it. It's like it's not there when you get down to 1 to 2 parts per million. And in my eyes, that's what I think everybody should be doing. This is Brian at Atlanta Hot Tub Center and what to do if you have low chlorine. Thank you.